Welcome back to another episode of Hail Yes, a Michigan football and basketball podcast by the Detroit Free Press. I am Andrew Burkle, of course joined by our Michigan beat writer, Tony Garcia, coming off another big Michigan basketball win on Tuesday night. Tony, how was the Chrysler Center? And since we haven't heard from you since your trip out west, how was the trip out west, man?
It was good. Michigan, 3 straight double-digit victories on the road. And nothing to shake your head at when you're able to get a couple done on the road. They were both by 10 over Oregon, and before that over Washington. But as far as this return home, it felt closer for the first 30 minutes to that Michigan basketball team is still there, right? That's what I wrote in my post game. Of course, they kind of let it slip away late, so the final score didn't really reflect just how dominant this was for the first 3 quarters of the game. I mean, a really great start to this game, and by the time Indiana really got going, Michigan always just had them at an arm's length. Indiana started 1 of 15 from the floor, right? And by the time they look up 10 minutes in, it's 22-5 Michigan, and then I think it got closer than 10 points for 7 seconds the rest of the way. So it was never in doubt. But then again, a lot of the talk post game was about how Dusty was telling the team, this is about maturity and how this team still needs to be able to find that level where when you are up 25, 66-41 midway through the second half, it's not just in cruise control. You're not just coasting to the finish line knowing there's no way they can catch you, because that's how that starts happening and has happened lately. When you're up 10, when you're up 15, we can get into it a little more later, but there have been a number of games where Michigan was up somewhere in that 10-15 range and then either lost it, Wisconsin, or played with their food long enough to let a team come all the way back. And for them to take the lead, Oregon, Michigan was up 12 and then they're down 3. So it's that second run. Michigan was able to put that second run together at the beginning of the second half, which separated them out to 25. But these are nitpicky things. But when you are this level and you have this level of aspirations, you have to be nitpicky. You have to really hammer all these little things, because if you're up 15 and you're in the NCAA tournament and a team gets hot and they're only down 3 now, that is, the weight of the world is on your shoulders in those moments. You got to be able to find ways to keep teams at arm's distance. That's really what I took from the game against Indiana. It was a really great effort most of the way, but you got to finish.
It's funny because a little inside baseball here. So last night you wrote the story. I edited your story. And you wrote in there, on the heels of 4 consecutive lackluster performances, Michigan returned home, yada, yada, yada. Now I changed it to, on the heels of 4 consecutive pedestrian performances, parentheses, for the Wolverines, extremely high standards. Because this is their 3rd straight win by double digits, and yet we're on and yet they could easily be considered lackluster performances, right? Because the bar is what you set it for yourself. And Michigan has their number 1 in KenPom, the number 1 in a lot of the advanced analytics. They were annihilating teams for much of November and December. So we know what this team is capable of, and that Indiana team came out and got absolutely blitzed. No matter what you want to say about this defensive performance for Michigan or the last few minutes, the first few minutes, my goodness, I wrote in our notes for the pre-show, it looked like, the middle school students versus the teachers game for the first few minutes. They couldn't even get a shot off. It was like the broadcasters, I think it was Robbie Hummel, was like, what is going on right now? This is they can't even get a shot off, right? That's how intense the Michigan defense was. And it was clearly a message, hey, let's return home strong. And they did that for the first, 30 minutes of the game, and then maybe took the pedal off down a little bit and let Indiana back in the game. They hit some shots. Indiana's a decent shooting team. That's what they do. But overall, this is Big Ten basketball. These are college basketball players. This is not the Oklahoma City Thunder, right? They're not a team of professionals. Now they are getting paid, but these guys are still not going to be perfect over a 40-something game season, right? So it's not that big of a deal. And I thought it was overall an impressive performance. Again, coming home off a semi-tight turn, flying home Saturday night, getting home, probably in the early hours of Sunday morning, probably resting Sunday, practice Monday, back on the court Tuesday. Then you're back on the court again Friday against Ohio State, which we'll touch on a little bit later. They're in a tough stretch of the schedule right now.
Yeah, no, they're about to enter it. But just before we get into that, I just wanted to say that this game didn't feel like the last 4, right? Where some of those, obviously they had the one loss to Wisconsin, but finding a way to survive at Penn State, they ended up being 10-point games against Washington and Oregon, which we've mentioned a couple times now. But the Washington game was inside. I mean, it was bouncing between 5 and 9 points for much of the second half. Michigan was down 3 to Oregon. This was more like in that run where Michigan won 8 of 9 by 25 points or more. And Michigan had it back out to that lead for a big majority of the time. And so what I was asking Dusty about postgame was like, some of these games, like you said, right? You're not going to have it every night. This is a long schedule, but this felt like a step forward, whereas some of the other games felt maybe more like just finding a way, surviving. All right, like we don't have our fastball tonight. Like we got to beat them with the off speed and then just kind of regroup and go. Like Michigan, I mean, there were flashes of Michigan at their best. I mean, they were shooting the lights out I think they made half they missed their final 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 3-pointers of the game. And they were 10 of 19 before then, midway through the second half. So they're shooting it well. Indiana missed its first 10 threes of the night. Really the only problems on the night were turnovers. They had 13 overall, which actually for a full game it's a little higher than you want. It's not terrible. But the 9 in the first half was kind of how Indiana sort of slowly got back into it. And then 1 of 8 from the free throw line in the first half. I was like, where did this come from? They finished, I believe, 22 of 33 on the night. So they were 21 of 25 in the second half, which is really good, 84%.
And a lot of free throws. Holy cow, man. That game it felt like it was dragging on and on and on. There were just so many free throws. Indiana was not giving up, to their credit. They just kept fouling. At one point, I'm like, how do they have any fouls left? They just kept fouling.
Yeah, well, a couple of their players did foul out. 3, I think. Sam Alexis fouled out. Connor Enright fouled out. Oh no, and Bailey Reed had 4.
Yeah,
I believe
4.
It was.
Just two of them fouled out. Either way, 2 starters fouled out, right? So,
well, Michigan went more than 7 minutes without a field goal in the second half, right? And they scored 11 straight points from the line. So that's why Indiana wasn't really able to chip that much into that lead. I think 25 got as close as 16-ish before the final minutes. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, 7.5 minutes without a bucket. Like, even if you are getting fouled on half the trips down, I mean, they missed like 8 shots in a row. And that's kind of that killer instinct. What finally took the lid off the rim was that turnover and breakaway where Namari threw the lob and Yaxel. I mean, he didn't look like he had any calf problem on that one. I mean, he just threw it back. That was a massive one-handed slam. A largely good performance, but still not quite to that standard that they had set for themselves early in the year.
Before we look ahead a little bit here, do you want to talk about that Yaxel calf a little bit? Because if he was, like you said, he's flying through the air, I think physically he's able to still do a lot of the stuff that he normally would be able to. But you look around the last few months, maybe the last year, you want to say, in the sports world, I mean, you have Tyrese Halliburton playing on a hurt calf and he blows it out in the NBA Finals, right?
Don't even put that in the ether.
No, but like that's certainly that dude that you can't tell me that's not on these players' minds. There's been way too many calf injuries. You know, George Kittle, there's so many of these Achilles these days. Kevin Durant, especially with the stage at which the Tyrese Halliburton injury happened last year and the whole, hey, he's playing through this calf injury. I think that injury has become one where it's like a mental battle as much as it is a physical, because every time you go up on it, it's got to be a little scary. And I think that there's no way that even if he would probably never admit it to us, but in the back of his head, it's got to be something going on where it's like you think about it before you push off. And that could be the difference between the full Yaxel that we saw for the first few months and the guy who's playing with this calf injury. You know, it could be mental as much as anything.
Yeah, those are fair points. And I mean, I've talked to him like 3 times in this last week, a couple times out on the West Coast, and didn't ask him as much about the mental, but more as like, hey, what's going on? I mean, so just to recap, but right before the game against Washington, he had an ultrasound on his calf to make sure there were no blood clots, and that came back clean. And so, I mean, he sat down with trainers, he sat down with doctors, he sat down with Dusty May, and he is medically cleared to play. And so, I mean, it's not like anyone is forcing him to do so. They're leaving it up to him. But Yaxel is the type of guy, I mean, he does not want to sit out. He just plain and simple. He feels like it would be giving up. I mean, he only has 1 year in Ann Arbor. I mean, Michigan is chasing something historic. I mean, and that's not just a national championship. I mean, Big Ten title, national championship, 1 seed. And he feels like
this might be the best team he ever plays on, ever. In NBA, college, that has the potential to be how good this team is, right? I don't blame him at all.
Yeah. And also, this team is at its best when he is the straw stirring the drink, right? Like, he is the sort of the unicorn guy who can pass, who can dunk, who can score from outside when he's right, who can get in transition, who's good on the boards. This last game against Indiana was exactly what, I mean, it was not peak Yaxel Lendeborg, but this was classic Yaxel. 15 points, 7 boards, 4 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks. Just a complete stat sheet. I mean, what was missing was the stroke from outside. He's 1 of 5. But I mean, if he's even 2 of 5, right? Then that's 18 points. You're shooting, and then you're 50% from the field. You're 40% from the line. I think he made all of his free throws. Did he miss any? Yeah, 4 from the line. So just efficient. And he didn't turn the ball over. And if this is like a semi-hampered or like a not quite fully there Yaxel, and he told us after the game he was like 95%. I think that wasn't the way he made it sound at West Coast. We wrote about it on freep.com. I mean, he's like, yeah, like this thing has really been bothering me. He doesn't feel like he has as much explosion. Yesterday or Tuesday night, I should say, after the game, he said the real move that's bothering him is when he's trying to turn the corner and plant that left calf and go from vertical to maybe sort of parallel to the baseline. Like if he's trying to put up maybe a righty layup from the left block, and he's really trying to turn that corner that way. That's putting some strain on it. But I mean, he'd been quiet for a while, right? Like, I mean, it had been some time. I don't think he scored more than 15 points in a game this calendar year. The last time he had 16 against McNeese. And then before that, it was 29 against Maryland. And that was on December 13th, right? So he scored more than 16 points once in the past 2, 4, 6, 9, in the past 10 games, frankly. Even the Villanova game, he only had 9. So something's going on, obviously, but he does. And the last point I want to make is he feels like if he sits out a little bit, I mean, this is still a pretty new team. No teams are new halfway through the season, but he's a transfer. Cadeau's a transfer. Marr's a transfer. Morez is a transfer, right? McKinney's a freshman. He's still Michigan is still, as you could see, they're still a work in progress. And so they're still figuring out what works. And he just does not want to miss out on that chemistry. I think you bring up a good point. I mean, especially given that a lot of people think he's going to be a lottery pick in the NBA. It cuts both ways, right? If he's out, it's like, did he quit on his team, or is he just looking out for number one? And that is not who Yaxel is at all. At all. This is one of the most humble stars that I've been around at this level. I mean, he really stands out in that regard. But it's worth monitoring. I mean, we've been saying it for weeks.
The reason I wanted to bring it up is just because I've been thinking about how you see him flying through on some of these dunks, and you see him defensively. Calves not to bring it to the NBA world again, but someone has a calf in the NBA, it's usually going to hamper them on the defensive end where, maybe they're not shuffling as well, pushing off and leaping. And that seems to be where it catches up to players in the NBA. He looks really sharp on defense from what I'm seeing, especially at the rim protection level. I just thought maybe there is a little bit of a mental component to it, and it's probably close to 50-50, right? So we'll see. Something to monitor. A lot of season left. If this is the Yaxel you're getting until he actually is 100%, man, that's a luxury, right? Like you said, filled out the stat sheet, played 30 minutes, 5 for 11 from the field on a bad shooting day from 3. He's such a plus player, and he's always additive that it's as long as he's healthy for March, as cliche as it is. So let's move on and look ahead a little bit here, because Michigan's schedule is starting to get a little spicy here. So we got Ohio State at home from the Wolverines on Friday, where Trey Burke will have his jersey hung on the rafters, not retired. Big distinction there. So that's going to dominate the narrative on Friday. Then Michigan will host Nebraska in a huge game. The Cornhuskers still undefeated at time of recording. We saw a huge win for the teams competing for the Big Ten at the top, with UCLA beating Purdue on Tuesday night there. So the Big Ten race is heating up. And then, of course, at Michigan State on Friday, January 30th. So looking ahead, let's first talk about Trey Burke, because, man, that's a guy that anyone who's listening to this podcast is going to remember incredibly fondly. And you've been doing some reporting on it. So what kind of memories and Trey Burke stuff have been spurred up this week?
Yeah, got to talk to friend of the program, John Beeline, a bit, and then also caught up with Zach Novak and Stu Douglas. So a couple guys who were around, and Nick Stauskas, I should say. So some guys who were seniors when Trey was a freshman, and then Stauskas a freshman when Trey was a sophomore, and then Beeline who oversaw it all. So just a lot of different, like really, I felt interesting and unique perspectives on what it was. I'll tell a quick story from the story that is coming out. I think we're holding it for Friday morning, the day that his jersey goes in the rafters, sort of as a lead into the game. But I think one of my favorite stories was I was talking to Zach Novak and asked him like when he knew that this guy was different. And he talked about a run at the CCRB. So the CCRB is the Central Campus like recreation building in Ann Arbor, because in 2011, 2012, Chrysler was under construction, and the PDC, the Player Development Center, where they now practice, the practice facility was going up. So they didn't have anywhere to just have some runs. So they would go to the CCRB, which is just like the local IM, just sort of near South U there, and play 5-on-5. And it was the first game. So they're playing by straight ones, no ones and twos, no twos and threes. Every bucket is one. It's 6-6 in the first game. Trey brings it up court, like about 5 feet behind the line, gets behind his screen, pulls, dagger, ball game. And this is going into his freshman year, right? And so Zach tells me, he's like, yeah, I went over to Trey. I'm like, hey, like, great shot, dude. Like, game time, that's awesome. But like, we can get a better look. We have to get a better look when the game's on the line and things matter. He's like, all right, cool. Like, I got you. Next game, 6-6 again. Trey brings it up court. He spins off one defender, crosses over the next, and then throws a floater from the lane over like the 6'10" John Horford. Cash. Game. And then Novak was like, he's like, I never even said anything about this, but like if anyone else had done this, it would have been like get this guy out of here. Like, what is going on? And then third game, 6-6 again. And none of this is made up. This is all a real story from Novak. It's 6-6 again. Trey's bringing it up court. This time he's even farther back than the first three he took. He's maybe like 8-10 feet behind the 3-point line. Like this is like a 30-footer, and just hoists it and drills it and wins the game. They win all 3 games. Novak starts walking up to Trey, and then Trey's like, before Zach says anything, he's like, I know. He's like, we got to get a better shot. He's like, no, Trey, forget everything I just said. If you ever have the ball and the game is on the line, shoot. And so like that really was like a poignant story for me about like this, this is like, and that's a senior captain, Zach Novak, who in the span of 45 minutes went from coaching this dude up to like this is like not, this thing is not like the other, right? One of these things is not like the other. And then there's just so many more, like John Beeline, like when they went to Maui, like John Beeline, like I won't get into the whole thing, but Michigan plays in the Maui Invitational. They have 3 games, 2 of them against like top 10 ranked teams. They go 2-1, they finish third. And John, they went there, like Stu Douglas is the backup point guard to Trey, who's a freshman. And John's like, oh man, like he's like we're going to have a point guard problem. Like that's his mentality going into this Thanksgiving week tournament. Then he's actually what he said, oh damn, we're going to have a point guard problem. And then coming out of Maui, he's like, oh, damn, we're only going to have that guy for like a year or two. Like talking about Trey, like knowing he was going to be an elite player. And then Stauskas just has stories about Trey's work ethic and running full court. And so I'm not going to give away every story, but like those are some of the details in this story. Really thankful to all those guys for taking the time to sort of help detail just frankly the greatest Michigan basketball player of this century. I think there is little question about that. And that's why he's getting this honor, which he rightfully deserves. Every major Michigan basketball fan I know who is even our age, right? Especially because, I think Trey was a freshman in 11 and 12. Like that was my freshman year as well. So, exactly the same age as him. And you're a little bit younger. So I guess maybe, but like, there's still sort of like that, their older sentiment. But like even older fans I know, like Trey Burke is just in a category of his own, right? Nick Stauskas compared him to Allen Iverson, just in terms of like aura, swagger, and game style a little bit. So it'll be rocking in Chrysler on Friday.
Oh, no doubt. It's just a time period too that everyone, I think that is a fan of Michigan basketball associates so fondly with, because it's like, it was in a lot of ways the coming out party, the rebirth, even though there had been some successful years for Michigan under Beeline before that. It was like, okay, this is a new level. This is a new statement. And really putting Michigan back on the map for laughing stock might be too strong of a word, but they would get a lot of the NIT crap, and they would get
afterthought.
Yeah,
an afterthought.
And then Trey Burke comes in, and all of a sudden he's not just Michigan was cool again too, right? He made him cool again to a certain degree. And I remember, obviously I went to high school in the Ann Arbor area, and so everyone at school was always talking about, Trey Burke, and he's just such an impactful player at the time, and it's cool to see him get honored now. And I also like a couple of years ago, Draymond Green got honored at Michigan State. It's like, it's cool when they do these things when the players are still not as old, right? Where it's like there's still fond memories and they're not distant memories, right? And I like that the timing of this feels right.
Totally. And they gave Trey a few options for which night he could have his jersey go in the rafters. And he picked Ohio State on purpose because, as everybody, Trey, Columbus guy, always wanted to play at Ohio State. He was recruited originally by Penn State, committed to Penn State. Beeline flipped him to Michigan. Ohio State was recruiting Shannon Scott at the time. And by the time they're like, oh, maybe this Trey Burke guy is like pretty good, like that ship had sailed. And he was an Ann Arbor guy through and through. And I guess one point I wanted to make about, you totally hit the nail on the head. Trey Burke made Michigan basketball cool, like brought them back to that. Michigan basketball with the Fab Five, that's one of the coolest teams of all time, right? Like and that was coming off a national championship in '89. The Michigan basketball was for the culture in the late '80s. Early 90s. And then there's sanctions with the Fab Five. They go through the Brian Ellerby days. Tommy Amaker kind of starts to turn a corner. I think in '04 it was, they would have made an NCAA tournament, but they still had to serve a punishment. So they win the NIT with Daniel Horton and Deion Harris and Brent Petway and those guys. But really, and I'm just going to quickly tease another story that is almost written. It's not quite finished, but it's almost written because I had a lot of these guys. I would say Trey Burke made Michigan basketball cool, but it was Zach Novak and Stu Douglas in a game in January in 2011 in East Lansing that saved the entire era. It was the fourth year of John Beeline in Ann Arbor. Things were going sideways. John said as much to me. He's like, I don't think I would have lasted for a fifth season if Michigan did not beat Michigan State in East Lansing that year. And Novak hit 6 threes that day, scored 20 points. Stu Douglas hit the dagger 3-pointer with 15 seconds left to end. Michigan was 1-6 going into that game in the Big Ten. And then they make the NCAA tournament and win a game in the 2010-2011 season. And so those guys, and then those guys who really had won big time games like that at Michigan, right? They just 4 months later are the ones looking up to this incoming freshman who is Trey Burke. So that is the levels to this. There's so many different pieces that are sort of at play together. And so also coming up on Freep.com next week as a lead up to the Michigan State game. You heard about all the those 4 players we just mentioned. Michigan is 3-22 in their last 25 games in East Lansing. So, a lot of teams don't have success in East Lansing, but Michigan basketball has had much more success than that record would indicate. That's not that's pretty alarming to win 12% of your games, even if you're playing against a good program with a good history. So talk to some of the guys about what it takes, what they remember from their days in East Lansing, and where it ranks in terms of their favorite moments from the regular season. Some of these guys went to national title games, right? So obviously it's not going to be the same, but in the regular season, what it takes, if this team has the makeup, I think they do, certainly to give it a good run. It's hard to pick anybody to win in East Lansing, but this would be one of the teams you'd pick to do it. So that's, just a lot of really cool stuff, I think, coming up over the next 10 days with this program.
No doubt. Real quick, just because we kind of touched on it, and then we'll take a break and talk a little bit of football on the other side. Let's talk about the Big Ten race that's shaping up to be one of the most fun ones that I can remember in a while. You have some legit teams at the top. Michigan, as we know, very legit. Michigan State continues to impress. They went on the road, won both their games on the West Coast like Michigan did, and even had some bigger deficit or bigger wins on the road. Spartans lost, and their only loss on the road to Nebraska. Michigan's only loss at home to Wisconsin. And Nebraska still sitting here undefeated in the conference and 18-0 overall. I mean, then you have Purdue, who just lost their first Big Ten game. Absolute fight, rock fight on the road. Incredible shot making. I was watching it last night against UCLA, and Mick Cronin's team was fired up after another crash out by Mick. And you have Illinois as well. I mean, this is just at the top, as legit as the Big Ten has been in some time. So I just want to share your quick thoughts on what's shaping up to be an awesome conference basketball race. And you have the two rivals in the mix as well that makes it just that much spicier.
Yeah, no, you said it. I mean, Nebraska is the only undefeated team. I mean, the phrase is overused, but like, who had on their bingo board that Nebraska ball was going to be 18-0 and 7-0 in the league at this time? And they won their final 6 or 7 last year, winning the crown. I mean, they've won like 25 straight games. I was on like a radio show last Thursday that I do every week, and I still wasn't quite like, I'm still like 1 foot in, like I'm not all the way in on Nebraska just because I'm just not ready to get hurt. But they play Washington at home. You got to think that's a win. I would look out for Minnesota over the weekend. I think this is on Saturday, the 24th. Yep, Saturday. Saturday. Okay. In between, it's off asleep, what should be a sleepy home win against Washington. And then you know on Tuesday, you got a date with Michigan on the road at Chrysler. That Minnesota has given some teams some trouble this year. I know we're trying to talk about the Big Ten race at large, but like they went to OT with Ohio State. They pushed. It was a pretty close game at Illinois. That's a tough game. Wisconsin, it was a 3-point loss, and they were and Minnesota was like in it, down 2. With like 30 seconds to play, right? They just needed to stop, couldn't quite get it. And that was the game they hit that deep 3 to tie it with 3-4 seconds left at 75. And then John Blackwell comes back and buries like a 35-foot buzzer beater. And that was off a 1-point loss to USC in overtime, right? So, it is close game after close game for these guys, and what they're going to pull it off on somebody. And so, but just overall,
well, not to mention like similar vein, Penn State almost beat Michigan and Michigan State at their building, and they're winless in the Big Ten, right? Like Oregon is playing really bad right now. They're down their 2 best players, and they gave Michigan a semi-tough game, especially in that first half. They were beating Michigan at the half. The top to bottom depth of the conference feels different this time around, and it seems like, I don't know if the Big Ten did it on purpose, but it seems like a lot of the schedules are backloaded here, or at least heating up in the next few weeks. It's not just Michigan's schedule; it's getting tougher. Nebraska's schedule, they play, as you mentioned, at Minnesota, then you play at Michigan, then you host Illinois, and then you're at Rutgers, and then you're playing Purdue, right? So we're going to find out real quick if Nebraska's legit.
Yeah. And then, and this is one of those stretches for Michigan, right? We talk about it. I think this Ohio State game at home with the juice of Burke, like that should probably be pretty good. But Nebraska at home and then MSU on the road. If Michigan 2-1 in this stretch and you're still in the hunt, 1-2 and you are looking uphill, 3-0, and I think you are in the driver's seat, obviously, because you would be in first place in the league because you'd have the head-to-head over Nebraska. You would have knocked Michigan State down to a second loss, and then you'll be in the back half, like, because that will have been 11 down, 9 to go in the league. Then you got Penn State at home. That should be good. Couple road games. They do play at remaining after this stretch. They got Purdue on the road and Illinois on the road, right? And neither of those teams come to Ann Arbor. So that's tough.
Yep. And the thing about Purdue, too, is that Purdue gets Michigan and Michigan State only at home. So
that's why for the league, this UCLA win was...
Yeah, exactly. Because that's a huge schedule advantage for Purdue. I think it was the opposite last year, right? They played only at Michigan and at Michigan State last year. Or no, Michigan went to Purdue last year. Did they get them?
Yeah, Michigan went to Purdue last year and got smoked. They got absolutely smoked. They were down by 10. They did, and they beat them. And then they had the rubber match. Purdue. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, and they actually got the triple
Yes,
Purdue.
no, I
They
remember
got
now.
Purdue in the Big Ten tournament as well.
They pulled out one of their crazy miracle wins against Purdue last year, kind of, right?
Yeah,
it was a tight one.
I don't know. I mean, I think they were. It was tight. It was tight. I don't know if I would call it a miracle.
Yeah,
they had tighter,
fair.
but no, it was a tight win. But it just that many didn't see coming after the way. At least I didn't. After getting just annihilated at Mackey earlier in the year. All right, good hoop stuff.
Yeah, we'll wrap up hoops here. Stick with us. We'll be right back with some football talk on the other side. All right, everyone. Thanks for sticking with us as we went through the Big Ten standings. We could talk about that all day, offline, online, wherever it is. Tony and I, once we start going about Big Ten basketball, you're not going to hear us slow down. So thanks for sticking with us. We did want to talk about some football and then a quick housekeeping note at the end. So you had a fun piece this week, one that I really liked, two separate pieces actually, where you were kind of grading the units via how Michigan did in the transfer portal. Because every once in a while, you and I have a hard time tracking all these guys who are coming in, who's going out. I like to do pieces where we can tell people, what the heck is going on? What really matters here? So you went through all the different positions and you graded them as a upgrade. What were your standards? Upgrade, downgrade, or
neutral?
Go ahead. Neutral. Okay. And so let's start with the offense. Obviously, quarterback Underwood's still going to be the guy, so we can probably skip past that. Running back room. How did you rate that position group?
Yeah, well, quickly on the quarterbacks, I called it like just a modest upgrade, and surely because of Jaden Davis was backing up last year, right? Like he was the number two, and so Michigan brings in Braden Fowler-Nicolosi from Colorado State, Colin Hurley from LSU. There will be a real competition for the QB2 this year, so I just wanted to touch on that. Running backs, I graded as neutral, but I'm waiting on a text back here. It seems as though Bryson Kuzzle is going to return. And so just that one little piece, I think I would tip me from neutral to slight upgrade, just because, you lose Justice Haynes. And so that is the massive, massive blow, obviously, right? Like that is, I would say he was Michigan's best running back last year. Jordan Marshall was very good, but Justice Haynes just has a little bit different juice. But again, Jordan Marshall, fantastic. He was nearly 1,000-yard rusher with 10 touchdowns, despite starting as the backup and splitting a ton of reps. So he's a guy who can go for, if he is the true lead back, he could go for close to 1,500 yards and 20 touchdowns next year, right? Like I don't think that's entirely out of the realm of possibility. Maybe 1,215 touchdowns, 20 would be a lot, but it's possible. Then they added Taylor Tatum from Oklahoma and Savion Hyder. Taylor Tatum was the number one running back in the class of 2024 in America, and Savion Hyder is the top running back in the nation in the incoming freshman class. And they will battle it out, presumably, for that RB2 spot. But now Bryson is going to have something to say about that. And that's a lot of depth, right? And so they might not have the person who, of all of them, I think is the best, but another year under their belt, a little more depth in the room. Like Bryson was the third guy last year. Now he's going to have to battle to be the third guy. Maybe he might be the fourth guy. So it's just a slight upgrade in that regard.
Yeah. And we gave them credit too for Savion Hyder, even though he's technically a high school signing, but it feels almost like a transfer portal keep because he could have so easily went elsewhere, but they held on to him. So it almost feels like an addition. So certainly that's a big bonus for the Wolverines. From the wide receiver room, you listed that as a major upgrade. Obviously, again, in today's day and age, keeping a player like Andrew Marsh is as big of a victory as getting somebody else coming from the outside, especially when you have a coaching change. So major bonus points for that. But Michigan made some other moves as well to help solidify a position group that has been rocky, right? Outside Marsh had a great year last year, maybe not great, really good year. Certainly in the second half. But this is a position that Michigan's wanted to upgrade for a while. So what happened in the wide receiver room that earned a major upgrade from you?
Yeah, a lot. And just to set the scene for Michigan fans, I was talking to someone who yesterday who is very much in the know and involved in these sort of situations. And this person told me that they essentially, without hyperbole, had to re-recruit their entire roster. They said it was like everybody was in the transfer portal because there's a coaching switch, right? It's not like some of them, it's like, hey, you're coming back. Good. Like in a normal year, right? It's like, hey, we're going to run this back. Like, yeah, I don't know. Like this was like every piece was like a major ordeal. And so a lot of credit should go behind the scenes to like the GM Sean McGee, to the champion circle guys led by Jared Wangler, and who are just putting the dollars and the cents together. And I build off that because Marsh was one of the biggest must-have keeps on this team, and they were able to get it done. And beyond that, there are just some really high-level additions. Jamie French, former 4-star from Texas, JJ Buchanan, who caught 5 touchdowns and had 427 receiving yards as a true freshman last year for Utah. Celesi Moa, who is technically a transfer because he enrolled at Utah. He is an incoming freshman. He was top 50 recruit in the nation. And he had a really interesting backstory. He really considered Michigan, but then he ultimately committed to Tennessee. Then he flipped to Utah because his uncle, Lewis Powell, was a defensive lines coach there. And then Michigan gets almost all of Utah's staff, including Powell, including Whittingham, including Micah Simon, the wide receivers coach. And so and Michigan was really sort of recruiting him as a defensive back. And he's a two-way player, but he really wants to at least have a shot on offense to play wide receiver, which is why I believe his graphic listed him as a wide receiver. And so Michigan was able to get Celesi Moa, and then Travis Johnson was at one point thought to be like the star of the incoming freshman class, along like not quite Savion Hyder level, but like the receiver who is really going to make things go. And now he's 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th on the 5th, probably 5th, 6th, 7th on the. We're not doing 6-7 on the depth chart as far as where he's going to start this year. So, I mean, Michigan just completely revamped its wide receiver room overnight. I don't think there is a position group on this team that was more transformed in the portal than wide receiver.
Okay, quickly through the tight end group and the offensive line. What were the major additions and major subtractions there? You gave the O-line a moderate upgrade and the tight end room a downgrade. Moderate downgrade.
Yeah. Well, tight ends, there just wasn't any real addition of note. Like a lot of people thought that JJ Buchanan was a tight end, but he switched to the wide receivers room last year in Salt Lake City, and his graphic also said wide receiver. So he's going to start in Micah Simon's room. And then Michigan, they lost Marlon Klein, their best all-around player from the tight end room, Max Bredesen, Brady Prescorn, who went to Ole Miss. So they still got Hanson, Zach Marshall, and Deacon Sinelli, but if you're not adding a lot and you're losing some key pieces, even with some progression from other players, it's going to be a down tick. And Michigan, the offensive line story was just about keeping guys in the fold. Andrew Marsh was one of the major keeps, but no unit needed to be worked on and attended to quite like the offensive line. I mean, Jake Guarnera was in the portal. Andrew Sprague was in the portal. Evan Link, it sounded like was maybe considering looking around, but I don't think he ever actually went in the portal. They kept Blake Frazier. They kept Nathan Afobe. They kept Andrew Babalola. They kept Brady Norton. So your top 8 guys are still intact, essentially, going into next year. And then they added an interior lineman from Nebraska. So you lose a couple pieces on the fringes, Ty Haywood, Caden Strayhorn, depth guys. But overall, this offensive line, I think, could be one of the strengths of this team. I really like how this offense came together for Michigan. Depth at running back, depth at receiver, an offensive line that has a lot of dudes, and a quarterback room that is not, if you need a quarter, a half, a game from somebody else, you have a few options from players who have played either extensive football at the college level or have been on a roster like LSU. So you just feel like there's some upside about a former 4-star who had committed to LSU. So offense is in really good shape, I'd say.
All right, let's run through the defense quickly here. Start with the defensive line. What was your takeaway on defensive line? I'll just hand it over to you.
Yeah, a bit of a downgrade on this line, right? I mean, just listen to the names who you have leaving: Derek Moore, Rayshawn Benny, Trey Williams, Damon Payne, Ike Iwana, and I should have thrown this name earlier, Jayshawn Barham. So all of your starting 4 and 2 key rotational defensive tackles. That's just a ton to replace. Michigan did a good job keeping Trey Pierce, keeping Nate Marshall, Eno Etta, Dom Nichols, Cam Brandt, but and they do bring in, I mean, one elite piece, John Henry Daly from Utah, who led the nation in tackles for loss last year and was leading the Big 12 in sacks when he went down. He did suffer a major lower body injury, but sounds like he's going to be good to go for fall camp next year. And then Jonah Lea'ea from Utah. There's going to be a lot of Samoan names and Hawaiian names and AIAs coming through Michigan in the next few years. So just forgive me if I butcher some of them. You just got to hear it once from someone else and then you can know it. But he's a defensive tackle. He's proven he's a really good piece. So it's just, again, more going out than coming in. A lot of good talent coming in and returning. But Michigan's defensive line was good, not great last year, and they lose a ton of it. So I would be a little bit, for the first time in a long time, I'm actually a little bit concerned about Michigan's front seven and certainly its front four on defense.
Interesting. It's been such a staple for Michigan, feels like forever, but that much turnover can shake up any school's defensive line. So linebackers, a lot of connection with the front four there. Barham was listed as both a linebacker and edge for you, so understandably he played both. But there was also some turnover at linebacker as well.
Yeah, Jimmy Rolder had one more year of eligibility. He opted to forego that and go to the NFL. Ernest Hausman, who, I mean, wasn't around for the last couple weeks of the season with his own personal situation, has medically retired. I mean, he was a captain. He was the green dot. He could have come back for one more year. And then Cole Sullivan, who I think might be the biggest loss of the bunch, transfers to Oklahoma. He was just an absolute playmaker this year. One of the reasons they moved Barham from linebacker to edge was because Rolder and Sullivan were both playing so well at that linebacker spot. They just wanted to find a way to get them more reps. They figured Barham would help with the pass rush. It was one of the better coaching moves Michigan made all year, frankly. They figured Barham would help with the pass rush, would get more talent in the linebacker room. And now everybody who started on the two deep last year is gone. They did break in some of the younger guys, Troy Bowles, Chase Taylor, Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng, and they've added a few pieces from the portal. Nate Staling from North Dakota State, who was at the basketball game last night, by the way. Max Alford, the nephew of Tony Alford, Michigan's running backs coach. Isaiah Moa, who is the brother of Celesi Moa, the wide receiver we just talked about. And then Christian Pierce, who is the brother of Trey Pierce, Michigan's defensive tackle, who we also just talked about. So a lot of familial connections in this room. None of them are, frankly, proven at a high level. The most proven guy of those is Staling from North Dakota State, but that's a different level. I have concerns about this linebacker room. I mean, for an average Big Ten room, this is kind of what it looks like. But for Michigan, who's gone from the guys we just mentioned, and before that had Junior Colson, had Michael Barrett, right? Like studs, NFL dudes who have just rotated through this room for years. To go from that to a lot of players who are frankly unproven, that's one of the reasons why I have some hesitation about the front seven as a whole and in the linebacker room specifically.
When you have this much roster turnover, there are going to be some question marks, right? I mean, in the offense, it seems like things really panned out and worked out how Michigan would hope. But the defense, of course, there's going to be some areas you can't get everything exactly how you want it. So maybe they're internally more confident in some development from the defensive line, from the linebacker room. But certainly we're going to have our eyes on that. But the one room that you do see as a major upgrade on the defensive side is the secondary. So, I shouldn't say major. You put it as a modest upgrade. But tell me about some of the exciting new names coming in there.
Yeah, because these names coming in, Christopher Bracey from Memphis, proven safety, Smith Snowden, an all Big 12 second team guy from Utah, and an upperclassman. And then got to mention him again, Celesi Moa, because he could play both ways for Michigan. You really don't know. And then you kept Jair Hill in the fold. You kept Zeke Berry in the fold. Shamari Earls should play a much bigger role. Rod Moore is coming back, and I think will pretty likely be what I have to imagine is the first 3-time Michigan captain in the history of the program. So Mason Curtis, right? A lot of these guys who are key pieces are returning. But Michigan's secondary was really deep last year, and a number of them have departed. TJ Metcalf, who led the team in snaps, is at Tennessee. Elijah Dotson, who came in from Belleville, is off to Missouri. Jaden Mangum, a depth piece, is at Purdue. Brandon Hillman, a starting safety, is at Virginia. Jaden Sanders, who really filled in pretty admirably when Zeke Berry was down early in the season and got a lot of reps for a true freshman. He's at Notre Dame. I mean, and listen to those teams that they all transferred to, right? I mean, Tennessee, Missouri, Virginia, Notre Dame, even Purdue, though that's not a great program. They're all power conference teams. So, I mean, it's not like these guys are transferring down and getting out like other teams that have intentions of being decent next year made a run at these guys. So, I will still call it an upgrade overall because of just how much is coming back and the high upside of the talent coming in. But it's not, again, it is not quite as deep as we had seen in the past. But some of these dudes, I mean, if you're looking at a starting secondary of Jair Hill at one quarterback, Zeke Berry at the other, Chris Bracey, Smith Snowden, and Rod Moore in the two safeties and maybe like a nickel spot. That's 5 dudes, like for real dudes who can play and have a ton of experience at this level. I mean, I think the offense overall revamped a little better than the defense did, but I think there's enough on both sides of the ball for Michigan to feel there's no glaring weakness. The linebacker room is a little spotty, but outside of that, I think for how this could have gone down, Michigan deserves a lot of credit for putting this roster together.
Yep. And last but not least, special teams, where Michigan got a new kicker, a new punter, and a new long snapper, right?
Yeah. I mean, you'd think it would be a downgrade because you're losing Zavada, but Nico Crawford was actually, the kicker from Pittsburgh. He was actually a Lou Groza Award finalist. Michigan hasn't had a good punter or a good punting season, I should say, in a couple of years. And Hudson Hollenbeck is still in the fold. It's Trey Butkowski from Pitt. He will have to battle it out with Cameron Brown from UNLV. Hollenbeck will for the punting role. So, but no matter what, I think the entire unit is going to be better with Kerry Coombs leading it than the previous staff, which just was awful, just frankly awful for 2 years in a row.
No doubt. Well, speaking of the former staff, we did want to mention housekeeping. Sharon Moore is going to, we think, be in court. I guess it's not a guarantee. Everything is moving parts these days with different courts and all that stuff. But Sharon has a probable cause hearing. What do Michigan fans and people need to know about that?
Yeah, I mean, the court date is set for, I think we're going to be releasing this on Thursday, January 22nd that morning. He's due right around 9 a.m. So myself and Dave Boucher, our investigative reporter, will be back in the 14A District Court in Washtenaw County around 8 a.m. tomorrow or today as you're listening to this. And usually this is generally, as Dave has helped explain, this is generally just housekeeping if they're going to go forward with what is called a prelim. And that's where some of these charges would more formally be filed. And then if in a preliminary examination, all you need to there's like a lower burden of proof of what you need to prove. It's not be it like that. It's more likely than not, as opposed to be like beyond a shadow of a doubt, which is what the level that needs to be proved at trial. And so if you can't prove that lower level of burden of proof at a prelim, that's why they won't even bring it to trial. But this hearing is sort of to set the date, generally speaking, for that next level. Now, there's always a chance that Sharon could take a plea deal, but usually that would have already happened. It's not that it can't happen after this stage, but if they weren't going to have a probable cause hearing, it would have already happened. So that's why we are fully under the impression that Sharon will be in person for this probable cause hearing tomorrow. Now, they could do it virtually, but that's less likely than the case of Sharon coming to court. So that's where I'm going to be tomorrow. And we'll try to hope to get a couple of questions in with him edgewise. I imagine his attorney won't want him speaking much, but it's our job to be that media throng to try and corral him, see if he has any statement for the fans, for his family, for Michigan, for his players, for the staff, everything that just happened because of what he's done, frankly. This saga is not over, and its next chapter will be coming on Thursday.
All right, good synopsis. Obviously, keep an eye at freep.com/sports, freep.com for Dave's coverage. We'll have it as we did with the breaking news in December. So please check that out. Stay with us. Make sure to rate and review the podcast. Thank you to our editor of the podcast, Robin Chan. Thank you to our editor-in-chief at the Free Press, Nicole Avery-Nichols. And thank you to our acting sports editor, Ryan Ford, as always. With that, thank you for making it this far into the pod, and we'll talk to you guys next week for a preview of Michigan and Michigan State, amongst other things. So lots of good stuff ahead. Thanks as always. We'll talk to you guys then.